Hi there, I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist, and welcome to TeachMeToTalk.com's Therapy Tip of the Week. Do you have the game Twister laying around anywhere? If you're younger, maybe it's still at your mom's house, so you need to go visit mom and dig it out. If you have older kids like me, maybe you bought that game for your own children. You need to go get it out of your games that you've stashed away in the attic or the basement so that you can use it in speech therapy with your younger friends, toddlers and preschoolers. Now, you're not going to play this game in the regular way. We're not going to be contorting our bodies and putting our hands on blue and our foot way over here on green. Let me teach you a different way that you can play this with our little friends and target language. Now, I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and the presenter suggested that we use this game as a way to work on color matching. Now, that's okay, and that is certainly a goal that we would want our children on our pediatric caseloads to work toward. However, I think we can do way, way, way better than that, and I'm going to give you some different ideas. Now, again, the obvious way to play this is to use a component of color matching. Now, you know, if you have watched any of my other Therapy Tips of the Week or DVDs or listened to my podcast or heard me live, you know how I feel about teaching nonverbal toddlers and toddlers who are minimally verbal, who aren't using very many words. You know how I feel about teaching them these academic things like colors and shapes and letters and numbers. Guys, those words are not functional. Little kids do not really need those words to get through the day. They need them when they go to school. Certainly when they're in 4-year-old preschool and in kindergarten, they need to know their colors. But if they can't use more functional words like cup or like truck or like ball, they have no business learning those other kinds of words yet, color, shapes, letters, and numbers. So let's talk about how we can still maybe use their strength, which would be matching or liking color. Some of our little friends, say, who are on the autism spectrum, practically teach themselves colors, don't they? So this is a way to tie in with what they already like, build on that foundation that they maybe have already, again, established on their own, and work it into a language kind of game. So we're going to talk about several different ways to do that. Now, besides the Twister game mat, you're going to need to do a little bit of planning for this kind of game. So raid your toy stash wherever you have your inventory of toys, and for me it's a closet in my office, and I went in and I just gathered as many different almost solid color items as I could find. And again, we're looking for green, yellow, blue, and red so that we can match the Twister circles here. So you'll want to gather a wide variety. So look at some of the things that I pulled out here. Now, I am all about practicing functional words, especially for our little guys who don't say very much yet, and even more importantly for our little friends who don't understand very many words yet. So you want to be sure that you include a lot of functional words like cup, I mentioned truck, spoon, anything like that that they would really, really use in their daily routines. You also maybe want to pull in some words that are a little novel, or maybe things that they use that they don't say yet, like straw. Or you could even use some of their special little interests like Thomas or Elmo. So again, lots of opportunities here, and for different children you may want to approach it in a different kind of way. Now, when I'm working on receptive language with a child, and remember, some of you may be moms who are listening and you're not quite sure what I mean by receptive language. Receptive language means what a child understands. Now, a child has to understand a word before he ever has a shot at saying that word, okay? So we can use this kind of game to target receptive language, or language comprehension, or auditory comprehension, whatever you want to call it, and again, well before we expect the child to be able to talk. So we may just work on something like following directions. So if I have my bucket of objects here, and again, you may use a bucket, you may put your things in a basket, a box. You know, too, if you've watched any of my other videos, that I like to use those 2.5-gallon clear Ziploc bags. You could put your things in that, and you could maybe have a child dig around in there as you give the command, like, find the hat. Okay, if a child can't do that, if say you were looking in my bucket here and I still have, 20 things in here, that may be too hard for some of our friends. So then what you would do is just maybe even hold out a choice of 2, or maybe even set it on the floor so that they can see and kind of have that separate and they're not visually distracted by all the other things. And you would say something like, get the fish, and the child would pick the right one. And again, remember, you're not focusing on color words here. And for some of you who are working with families, you'll have to really tell mom that the idea here is not for her to say, get red. You want to include your language goals here. And so you're working on the names of things. So when he's found, so you've done your boat and your fish, and he's found the fish, what does he do after that? Well, he gets to run across the room and match it to the right color. Now, I think I forgot to say this part already. You will want to have your twister mat well away from you, say on the other side of the room. Now, you could do this activity just sitting with the child side by side, but let me just tell you, that is pretty darn boring. So if you'll add the movement component in and have the kid with you on one side of the room with your bucket, picking your object, and then running across the room, matching it to the right circle, and then running back, you'll be able to keep him in that game with you longer. You're going to ultimately get more word approximations, or again, if we're still on this receptive piece, more episodes of following directions or the opportunity to do that, or receptively identifying objects. If you're running across the room and you've got that little game component or that little movement component built in. So when a child, again, gets the right thing, even if you have to run with him, you may have to hold his hand and drag him across the room to get him to put the color, the object on the right color. There may be some kids on your caseload who don't understand that matching skill yet, and that's okay. This is your way to teach it, and again, embed it in a game and in another more language-based activity. So go with them, run across the room together, match it, put it on the right color, and then run back and repeat it again. And let me just say, don't skimp on that running part, because children need that movement to stay participating and to stay engaged with you, and it makes it a whole lot more fun. This also is a good game, even if you're playing it receptively, to use with groups of children. So if you have, say, a family that you're seeing the 2-year-old and they have a slightly younger sibling and a slightly older sibling, or say mom babysits and there are several children there, or say you're going into a daycare or a preschool, this is a great group activity. And again, you can switch these goals up. With one kid might be a receptive focus, another kid might be an expressive focus. So keep that in mind as we're rolling through these opportunities, all right? For an older child or an older sibling, again, you may make it a little more hard by including that color word. And again, this may be a higher level kid you have on your caseload. I mean, I think this game is perfect even for 4- and 5-year-olds. So with them, you may say something like, you'll have several of your objects there and they have to really listen, because you're going to say, get the blue spoon or get the green straw. So they have to hold 2 pieces of information there and listen, be able to pick the correct one, and then run and match it. Or you might even include 2 objects there. Get the spoon and the block, or get the truck and the cup. So they have to really, really listen. And for our kids who have difficulty with language processing, this would be a great, great, great way to work that in. Now, for higher level kids, after we have played a game like this for several times, I like to trick them a little bit. Do you know what I mean by that? I might include objects where there's no color match. So a pink pig or a purple straw. So I can really assess, what will they do? How will they respond? What you want them to do is to ask you for clarification, to pick it, and then to run across and realize, oh my gosh, there's no pink. And then to turn back to you like, what do I do now? And so again, I think it's a great, great, great way to assess those higher level cognitive skills and that cognitive development that we want to see going on with friends on our caseloads. It's a great way too, if you're working on expressive language, to practice negation, meaning this one is not blue, it's not yellow. And so you can target those kinds of words too. Now let's face it, some of our little friends are not going to be able to do even this pretty simple activity. So how would you use it with a kid like that? Or say you're working with an older sibling, but you still want to include the 18-month-old. for those kids, your goal is just to get them to learn the routine. And so you may just let them pick anything, say this glove, and you're kind of just telling them what it is. You'll say, oh, you got glove, 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 let's match glove. And you're running across the room and you're helping them get it on the right color and then running back. And for them, again, your focus really is, will he participate in the game? Will he follow the routine? Will he stick with it for more than a millisecond? Do you know what I mean? So even for your lower functioning kids, I think you can engage them and get them participating in this kind of activity. All right, let's move on and talk about our expressive goals. What can we do with this kind of game? Well, of course, you can have a child name the object. Some of our kids, though, get so frustrated with that confrontational naming task. So instead of them pulling something out, say this egg, the Easter egg, they may freeze when you say, what's that? Because they feel under too much pressure. So just reduce the pressure a little bit. Let them pick, and as they're looking, say, what are you going to get? What do you see? So you're just kind of conversationally asking those kinds of things. And then you might even include some comments like, oh, I like it. It's so pretty. I see your, and you're leaving that pause there. You're leaving that space for them to fill in what you've done. Now that's called the close method. It does work better, and traditionally it's used for children when you're doing verbal routines, when they know what the word is that they're supposed to say because you've sung it in a game or in a rhyme or in a song. But lots and lots of kids will name things better if you do kind of that completion method there, so don't forget that trick. Now if a child can't tell you what it is, you might also set up a situation like it's a little choice. You might say, let's think about this. And especially if it's a harder word. Let's say you got maybe a clothespin and tongs. And you might say, wow, is it a tong? And he might tell you yes or no with that. Or again, just hearing the word, he has an opportunity to imitate it there. So don't get locked into the child has to correctly name the object on his own. Have some flexibility there. Give some different levels of cueing so that a child is able to participate in whatever way he can. Now you can certainly use this game for requesting. So if you have children who know lots of labels, say they're higher functioning kids on the spectrum, and say, again, they might be almost 3 or even almost 4, and they know lots of things. They have lots of labels, but they're really not using their words to communicate or to initiate or to request. You can certainly practice this kind of a situation here. And you've got to be sure, though, that you're holding the objects, again, in your Ziploc bag or, guarding the bucket. So they have to ask you for what they want before they get it and before they proceed to match it. Now, this is a fantastic game, too, for children who call everything a color word. How many times have you, again, held up something and said, what's that? And the kid screams out, yellow! Yes, it's yellow, but yellow what? So you might, again, if he says yellow, you'll just make it a little bit harder and you'll say, gosh, what is it? And, yellow spoon, yellow straw, yellow boat. And you're certainly helping him understand that he's got to respond with more than a color word there. For children, too, who are kind of at the phrase level, you can certainly have them use their color words if they know these kinds of things already, to practice getting those into a 2-word phrase. So for our little guys that are, say, apraxic, they have childhood apraxia of speech, and they're really struggling to put 2 words together, but they know colors, and they certainly may know all of these names of things. This would be a great way to target that phrase practice. And again, it's not that drill and kill method. You're making it more game-like and a lot more fun. Now, if you have more time and you want to put a lot more thought into this, you could even really pick your objects so that you're including your phonological targets or your patterns or whatever you're working on. So let's just say that you have a kid who's working on bilabials or the lip sound. So you're going to get all things that begin with B, P, or M. So here you would get your boat and your block and your pig so that you're really targeting that pattern. Now that kind of therapy takes more planning than if you're just using a straight language approach. But that's okay. You could certainly do that. You could also do this kind of game with pictures, but I don't because I think real objects are a lot more fun So just wanted to throw that out there for those of you who are tempted to go through your flashcards and pick things with colors there. Let me also add that if you do not have a Twister game and you do not want to spend the $15.99 at Walmart to buy one of your own, you can modify it. You could cut out circles of felt and put them across the room, say on a white sheet or something. You can even be cheaper than that. You can even just get pieces of construction paper, and you don't even have to put them on a background. You could just put them across the room and have the child run and match that way. And I certainly have done things like that, especially in a pinch. If I'm in a family's home, need a quick game, didn't quite bring the things with me that I needed, you can certainly scour through a family's belongings and come up with this kind of game. Now, moms love this too because you're teaching them how to do therapy on the fly and how to include things that they already have in their homes. And all of our natural environment experts really love that kind of therapy. So be sure that you're including that in your little bag of tricks. So as you can see, this is a super way to target lots more than matching colors. And I hope I've given you some new ideas. For more creative ways to play these kinds of games, I have a great resource I want to tell you about. It's Teach Me to Talk, the Therapy Manual, and I have activities for children who are lower functioning, even lower than 12 months, all the way up to the developmental language age of 4. So again, check that out if you've not seen that already. I'm Laura Mize, and that's all for TeachMeToTalk.com's Therapy Tip of the Week.